That night, my son told me, "Sell Grandma's jewelry set. Mum, Sabrina needs the party to look prestigious." I nodded and quietly brought the old receipt copies to the pawn shop. No one knew that, instead of selling my past, I'd just bought their future to destroy it. The white gold and jade pieces sat heavy in my palm as I signed the papers. Not for surrender, but for war. They wanted me to sacrifice heritage for their vanity. I'd use it to purchase something far more valuable: control. My name is Eleanor Whitaker, and at 62, I thought I'd seen enough of life's cruelties after burying my husband 3 years ago. But sitting at my son's dining table that November evening in Cedar Ridge, Ohio, I discovered that grief comes in many forms, sometimes wearing designer heels and a practiced smile. The dinner had started normally enough. I'd brought my homemade lasagna in the same ceramic dish I'd used for 30 years, the one with the tiny chip on the corner from when Caleb dropped it, helping me in the kitchen at age 12. Now 33. My son barely glanced at it as he set it on the granite counter of his Riverton Heights home, a house that cost more than my husband and I had earned in a decade at Sunbray Logistics, where I'd spent 20 years managing accounts receivable. "Eleanor, darling," Sabrina said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness as she emerged from their master suite. At 30, my daughter-in-law had perfected the art of looking effortlessly expensive, though I knew from accidentally seeing their credit card statements that effortless cost them $4,000 a month. How quaint that you still use that old dish. She air-kissed my cheek, the scent of her Tom Ford perfume making my eyes water. Behind her, the dining room gleamed with new furniture that hadn't been there last month. The mahogany table reflected the crystal chandelier's light like dark water, and I counted 8 place settings of china I recognized from the Maple and Finch Country Club's gift shop. "Where's everyone else?" I asked, noting the elaborate spread. "Oh, just us tonight," Caleb said, finally looking up from his phone. My son had his father's strong jaw, but none of his warmth. Working as an engineer at Northbridge Infrastructure had hardened him somehow. Or maybe it was the 3 years of marriage to Sabrina that had stripped away his smile. "Sabrina has something important to discuss." We sat down, and I watched Sabrina push her microgreens around her plate, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with her napkin. The tears, when they came, were perfectly timed just as I reached for my second helping of bread. I can't do this anymore," she whimpered. "What's wrong?" I asked, though my stomach already knew. "It's just so hard. Eleanor, trying to build Vale Atelier into something respectable when everything around me is so common." She gestured vaguely at my lasagna, at the simple silver watch on my wrist, at my existence itself. "The Aurora Gala is in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And I have investors coming, media coverage arranged. But how can I present myself as a luxury event curator when my own mother-in-law shows up looking like she shops at Target?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I set down my fork carefully, the tiny clink against the china loud in the sudden silence. "Mum," Caleb said, and his voice had that rehearsed quality I recognized from when he was 8 and had practiced asking for a Nintendo in the mirror. "Sabrina's business is at a crucial point. The Aurora Gala could secure major funding for Vale Atelier's expansion. She needs to present a certain image. And what does my shopping habits have to do with her party?" I asked quietly. Sabrina's tears dried instantly. "Everything in this family reflects on me, on us, on our brand." She stood, pacing in her 6-inch heels that clicked against the hardwood like a countdown. "Which is why we need to discuss your grandmother's jewelry set." The words hung in the air like a blade. "The white gold and jade set," Caleb added unnecessarily. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "The one in your safety deposit box." "Mom left that to me," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant, as if someone else was speaking. "It's been in our family for 70 years. "Exactly," Sabrina said, spinning toward me with predatory grace. 70-year-old jewelry that's just sitting there, doing nothing, while I'm trying to build something amazing. Do you know what I could do with that money? The catering upgrade alone would make the difference between looking amateur and looking exceptional. "You want me to sell my mother's jewelry to pay for your party appetizers? God, you make it sound so trivial." Sabrina's mask finally cracked, showing the sharp edges beneath. "This isn't just a party. It's an investment opportunity. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? Sitting in your little ranch house, clipping coupons, wearing the same clothes you bought when Bush was president?" "Sabrina," Caleb warned weakly. "No, Caleb. She needs to hear this." Sabrina's perfectly contoured face was flushed now. "I've tried for 3 years. 3 years of including her, inviting her to the club, introducing her to my friends. And every single time, she embarrasses us. Last month at the autumn charity auction, she brought a pie. Like it was some church bake sale. It raised $300, I said. "That's not the point," Sabrina shrieked. "The point is image, perception, things that matter in the real world, not your little bubble of retired logistics managers and church friends." I looked at my son, waiting, hoping. But Caleb just stared at his plate. "Mum," he finally said, "just sell the jewelry, please, for me, for our future." The words I wanted to say burned in my throat. I wanted to remind him of the 17-hour labor that brought him into this world, the double shifts I worked to pay for his engineering degree, the nights I held him when his father died. Instead, I stood up, walked to the hall closet, and retrieved my purse. "I'll go to the bank tomorrow," I said. Sabrina actually squealed. "Oh, Eleanor, you won't regret this. The gala will be perfect, and everyone will see that the Whitakers are a family of substance." As I drove home through the dark streets of Cedar Ridge, my phone sat silent on the passenger seat. No call from Caleb, no apology, no second thoughts. In my rearview mirror, I could see them through their dining room window. Sabrina gesturing animatedly, while my son nodded along like a puppet. They wanted the jewelry sold. They'd get exactly what they asked for. But they never specified what I'd do with the money. The next morning, I sat in Hartley's fine jewelry on Main Street, watching Mr. Hartley examine my grandmother's set through his loupe. The white gold gleamed under his desk lamp, and the jade stones seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Each piece carried a memory, the necklace my grandmother wore to my parents' wedding, the earrings she'd given me when I graduated college, the bracelet that had circled her wrist through 2 wars and a depression. "Beautiful craftsmanship," Mr. Hartley murmured. "Art Deco period. Exceptional clarity in the jade. Insurance value would be around 40,000, though market price for quick sale would be closer to 30. "I need documentation," I said. "Original receipts, certification papers, photographs, everything." He looked up, surprised. "Planning to sell through auction that would get you better value. Something like that." I pulled out my phone. I also need you to separate the bracelet. What would that alone fetch? Perhaps 8,000. May I ask why? Family matter. I watched him photograph each piece, create detailed descriptions, print authentication certificates. When he finished, I took the bracelet and slid it across his counter. This one only. Cash, please. Leaving with 7,800 in cash and the rest of the set still secure. I walked to Cedar Ridge Community Bank, 3 blocks down. The November wind bit through my coat, but I barely felt it. In the lobby, I overheard 2 tellers gossiping by the coffee machine. Vale Atelier again, one whispered. That's the 3rd returned payment this month. Sharon in commercial says they're flagging the account. That woman owes half the vendors in town. My pulse quickened. I withdrew my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found May Ellison. We'd served on the church finance committee together for 5 years, and she'd mentioned her nephew Owen did private investigation work. May, it's Eleanor Whitaker. I need a favor. 2 hours later, I sat across from Owen Ellison in a coffee shop downtown. At 41, he had the organized look of former military, with files already spread between us despite my calling just that morning. Your daughter-in-law is interesting, he said, sliding a printout toward me. Vale Atelier LLC, registered 18 months ago, filed for 2 DBAs, 3 trademark applications, and 1 very creative loan arrangement. Creative how? She's using receivables financing, basically borrowing against future income. Problem is, she's pledged the same future revenue to multiple lenders. He pulled up another document on his tablet. This one's particularly interesting. A hard money loan at 22% interest, co-signed by someone named Caleb Whitaker. My coffee turned to acid in my stomach. He co-signed for how much? 75,000, due in 6 months. Owen watched my face carefully. There's more. The co-signer agreement has an acceleration clause. If Vale Atelier defaults, the lender can demand immediate payment from your son. And based on these bank records, she's already 3 weeks behind. I stared at the signatures, my son's careful engineer's handwriting next to Sabrina's looping script. What else? Owen pulled out a folder marked with sticky notes. UCC filings show she's been pledging company assets as collateral. The problem? Some of those assets don't exist. This inventory list claims 200,000 in event equipment, but her actual purchases total maybe 30,000. She's been renting everything else and passing it off as owned assets. Is that fraud? Depends on intent, but it's definitely misrepresentation. He showed me another document. This is where it gets interesting. She created Vale Holdings LLC last month, separate entity, only her name on it. She's been transferring Vale Atelier's actual assets to this shell company while keeping the debts in the original business. Setting up to abandon the indebted company. Exactly. Your son's name is on the debt, but not on any of the transferred assets. Owen leaned back. She's also been shopping for investors for something called Aurora Gala, promising 30% returns in 6 months. Based on what? Projected contracts that don't exist. I found her pitch deck in an online investor forum. He showed me glossy slides featuring elegant parties, but I recognized several photos they were from events at the Maple and Finch Country Club, not Sabrina's work. She's claiming these as her portfolio. I felt the pieces clicking together like the accounts I used to reconcile at Sunbray. Can you get me more details on her vendors? Specifically, who she owes and how much? Already did. He produced another list. Largest debt is to Brilliant Events Supply sound and lighting equipment. 43,000 overdue. They've filed for payment 3 times. What would it take to buy that debt? Owen's eyebrows rose. You want to become her creditor. I want options. I counted out 50 hundreds from the cash in my purse. This is your retainer. I need everything, every filing, every contract, every email you can legally access. Focus on the Aurora Gala, guest list, vendor contracts, investor commitments. This is going to get expensive, he warned. I have more jewelry to sell if needed. I stood, gathering the copies he'd provided. One more thing. Can you find out the exact terms of anything my son has signed? Every document, every guarantee. Mrs. Whitaker, are you planning something? I thought of Sabrina's tears, Caleb's silence, my mother's jewelry waiting in its vault. I'm planning to give my daughter-in-law exactly what she deserves, a memorable party that shows everyone who she really is. Walking back to my car, I passed the First Methodist Church where I'd been married 40 years ago. The sign outside read, "The truth will set you free. But first, it might make you miserable." I laughed, actually laughed for the first time since that dinner. Sabrina wanted my family's treasures to fund her illusions. Instead, I'd use them to buy something far more valuable, the truth, wrapped in legal documents and tied with a bow of consequences. At home, I opened my laptop and began my own research. Veil Atelier's website was all stock photos and vague promises. The testimonials had no last names. The address listed was a virtual office. But the Aurora Gala that was real, 3 weeks away at the Maple and Finch Country Club, promoted as an exclusive investment opportunity in luxury event futures. I printed the invitation and circled the date. Then I called Mr. Hartley back. "About the rest of my grandmother's set," I said. "Keep it in your safe for now, but have it ready. I might need to make a dramatic gesture." "Mrs. Whitaker, is everything all right?" "Everything's perfect. I'm just learning that sometimes the best way to honor the past is to use it to secure the future." 3 days into the investigation, Owen called me at 6:30 in the morning. "You need to see this. Can you meet me at the office?" His office occupied the 2nd floor of a converted Victorian on Maple Street. The walls were covered with whiteboards, and red string connected photos and documents like a spider's web of deception. At the center was Sabrina's professional headshot, all teeth and ambition. "She's accelerating," Owen said, pulling up emails on his monitor. "The Aurora Gala isn't just a fundraiser, it's her exit strategy. Look at this." He showed me a message thread between Sabrina and someone named Marcus Rothwell, tagged as Angel Investor Cleveland. She's promising him exclusive rights to Veil Atelier's expansion into Columbus and Cincinnati, same exact promise she made to another investor for Detroit and Pittsburgh. Owen highlighted the conflicting contracts. She's selling the same expansion rights multiple times. That's securities fraud. Only if she gets caught. The gala is her closing event. She collects the checks, transfers everything to Veil Holdings LLC, then lets Veil Atelier collapse with your son holding the bag. I studied the timeline Owen had constructed. What about the equipment she's been claiming as assets? Here's where it gets interesting. He pulled out rental agreements. Brilliant Events supply the company she owes $43,000. They've been providing everything for her staged photos. She sets up elaborate shoots, takes pictures, then returns everything. But last month, she stopped returning items. They've got 17,000 in unreturned inventory. She's keeping it for the gala. Has to. She can't afford to rent anything new. Owen showed me a court filing. They've initiated recovery proceedings. If someone were to acquire their debt and their rights, I'd control the equipment she needs for her grand finale. I calculated quickly. The bracelet money would cover it. Barely. Set up a meeting with Brilliant Events. What else have you found? Owen pulled out a thicker folder. Your son, I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitaker, but it's worse than we thought. My hands stayed steady as I read. Caleb hadn't just co-signed one loan. There were 3 personal guarantees, 2 equipment leases in his name, and a line of credit secured by his Northbridge Infrastructure 401k. Does he know? Based on these signatures' timing, he signed everything in bulk, probably during a quick paperwork session. Classic manipulation, overwhelm with documents, create urgency, get signatures before they read. The next document made my blood run cold. A power of attorney. Limited to business matters, but yes, she can sign his name to any Vale Atelier document. Owen's expression was grim. She's been using it. These vendor agreements from last week? That's not his actual signature? I stood and walked to the window, watching Cedar Ridge wake up below. School buses rumbled past. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the careful destruction happening in their midst. There's something else, Owen said carefully. I had coffee with the Maple and Finch event coordinator. Casual conversation about the gala. Sabrina's been telling everyone that you're fully supporting the event, that you're so proud you're selling family heirlooms to invest. She's using me as credibility. More than that, she showed several potential investors a photo of your grandmother's jewelry, claiming it's being liquidated as your buy-in. Your reputation in this community is solid gold. People trust you, so they trust her by extension. The rage that filled me was cold, precise. Nothing like the hot anger I'd felt at dinner. This was calculation, not emotion. Owen, what would it take to completely document everything, every lie, every forged signature, every misrepresentation? Another week, maybe 2, but the gala is in 18 days. Then we work faster. I pulled out my checkbook. Contact Brilliant Events today. I want to buy their debt and their recovery rights. Full assignment of claims. That's a big step. Once you own the debt, you have legal standing to protect my son and destroy the woman who's stealing his future. I signed the check. Do it. That afternoon, I met with Tom Brennan, owner of Brilliant Events Supply, in his warehouse outside town. The space smelled of fresh lumber and electronic equipment, rows of speakers and lighting rigs standing like silent soldiers. Mrs. Whitaker, I remember you from the hospital fundraiser. You organized that whole auction. Good memory. Tom, I understand you have a problem with Vale Atelier. His face darkened. 43,000 problem. That woman promised payment 6 different times. I've got emails, contracts, bounced checks. My lawyer says bankruptcy might be my only recovery option. What if I could offer you 25,000 cash today for the full debt and all your rights? He blinked. Why would you? Family matter. But I need everything, all documentation, contracts, correspondence, and I need you to keep providing equipment for the gala as if nothing has changed. You want me to keep working with her. I want her to think everything is normal until the night of the event. Can you do that? Tom looked at the check I'd written, then at the equipment Sabrina had been misusing. She's been telling people this is all hers, you know. taking investors through here like she owns the place. After the gala, everyone will know exactly what she owns and what she owes. We shook hands, and I left with a box of documentation and a legal assignment of debt that made me Sabrina's largest creditor. The UCC1 financing statement Owen would file Monday morning would perfect my security interest in every piece of equipment Vale Atelier claimed to own. That evening, Caleb called. "Mom, Sabrina said you sold some of the jewelry already." "Just the bracelet." "Good, good. She's under so much stress with the gala. This really helps." I listened to my son's voice, searching for the boy who used to build elaborate Lego castles, who cried when our dog died, who held my hand at his father's funeral. But all I heard was Sabrina's echo. "Caleb, have you been signing any documents lately?" "Just business stuff. Sabrina handles all that. She's brilliant with paperwork." "I'm sure she is." "Mum, you'll be at the gala, right? Sabrina wants to acknowledge your contribution publicly." I wouldn't miss it for the world. After he hung up, I opened the box from Brilliant Events and began reading. Every invoice, every broken promise, every lie documented in black and white. At the bottom was a USB drive labeled Security Footage. I plugged it into my laptop. The timestamp showed 3 weeks ago, 2:15 a.m. Sabrina and a man I didn't recognize were loading equipment into a rental truck. The next clip showed her the following day, photographing the same equipment in a staged warehouse setup. Potential investors touring the space as she claimed ownership of everything they saw. I saved everything to multiple drives, then called Owen. "How do you feel about video evidence?" "I feel like Sabrina Vale is about to learn why you don't mess with someone who spent 20 years in accounts receivable." "She wanted me to sell my past to fund her future," I said, watching her lie on screen. "Instead, I'm buying her present to end her charade." Poetic justice. "No," I said, closing the laptop. "Just justice, with interest, compounded daily." The UCC1 financing statement was filed at 9:05 Monday morning. By noon, I legally controlled every piece of equipment Vale Atelier claimed as assets. The beauty of secured transactions law is its quiet power. No drama, no confrontation. Just paperwork that could detonate a business with the stroke of a pen. I sat in Attorney Rowan Pike's office that afternoon, spreading documents across his mahogany desk. Pike had handled my husband's estate, and more importantly, he'd spent 15 years as a federal prosecutor before returning to Cedar Ridge. "Eleanor, this is..." He adjusted his glasses, reading through the assignment documents. "You've essentially bought a controlling position in your daughter-in-law's company without her knowing." "I've bought her debts, not her company. There's a difference. A difference that gives you more power." He examined the forged signatures Owen had documented. "This one here, your son's 401k as collateral, that's federal fraud if she used the power of attorney without explicit consent for that specific transaction. Can you prepare something for the gala?" Pike leaned back, studying me. "What kind of something?" "A notice of default and demand for immediate payment, properly served in front of witnesses. You want to serve legal papers at a social event. I want to serve reality at a fantasy convention." I pulled out the investor communications Owen had intercepted. "She's planning to collect checks that night, investment contracts signed on the spot. If she takes money based on fraudulent representations, wire fraud, securities fraud, potentially RICO if there's a pattern." Pike's expression grew serious. "Eleanor, this could destroy her. She's destroying my son. Which would you prefer I prioritize? He nodded slowly. I'll prepare the papers, but we should involve law enforcement if you have evidence of imminent fraud. After she takes the money, not before. I want her to show everyone exactly who she is. I left Pike's office and drove to Maple and Finch Country Club. The parking lot was full of luxury cars, and I recognized several from Sabrina's Instagram posts. Inside, the event coordinator, Patricia Westfield, was reviewing layouts in the main ballroom. Eleanor, I heard you're supporting Sabrina's gala. So generous of you. Family supports family, I said smoothly. I was hoping to contribute something special. Could I have 5 minutes at the podium to formally present our family's contribution? Oh, Sabrina would love that she's been telling everyone about your enthusiasm. Shall we say right before the investment presentation? Perfect timing? I walked through the space, noting camera positions, exits, the raised platform where Sabrina would pitch her pyramid scheme dressed as entrepreneurship. The room could hold 200. According to Owen's research, she'd oversold it to 300, planning to claim overwhelming demand while pocketing deposits for seats that didn't exist. That evening, I called my accountant. If someone defaults on a secured debt, and I foreclose on the collateral, how quickly can I liquidate? Depends on the terms. Commercial equipment, if your security agreement allows, immediately upon default. Why? Preparing for a foreclosure. Eleanor, you're retired. From employment, not from protecting my family. Tuesday brought new discoveries. Owen had found Sabrina's investor deck on her assistant's cloud drive. The numbers were pure fiction, projected revenues based on contracts with venues that had never heard of Veil Atelier, testimonials from clients who didn't exist. And my favorite touch, a photo of her standing in front of a Manhattan office building with the caption, Veil Atelier New York, coming soon. She's never even been to that building, Owen explained. It's a stock photo she photoshopped herself into. Add it to the evidence file. There's more. She's been negotiating with a commercial real estate broker in Columbus, signing a lease using your son's credit, with him as personal guarantor. The lease starts December 1st. After she's collected the gala money and disappeared. Exactly. But here's the kicker, she's already taken deposits from 3 Columbus vendors for exclusive partnership agreements at the new location. I felt the weight of my grandmother's jewelry in my mind, each piece a generation of careful savings. And Sabrina wanted to turn it into appetizers and lies. Owen, I need you to contact every investor she's pitched, discreet inquiries, find out exactly what she's promised them. Already started. The list is extensive. Wednesday. Caleb stopped by my house unexpectedly. He looked tired, stress lines carved into his face. Mum, I need to ask you something. He sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where he'd done homework for 12 years. Have you been talking to people about Sabrina's business? Why? She's getting questions. From vendors, from the club. Someone's been digging into our finances. I poured him coffee, the same way I had every morning of his high school years. Maybe they're doing due diligence. It's a big investment she's seeking. 200,000. She says, maybe more. He rubbed his temples. Mum, I don't understand business like she does, but something feels off. She won't let me see the books. Says I wouldn't understand the creative accounting necessary for growth. This was my opening. Caleb, what documents have you signed recently? I don't know. A lot. She handles all that. Do you have copies? She files everything. I wanted to shake him, to scream that his wife was a criminal and he was her mark. Instead, I took his hand. After the gala, we should talk, all three of us, about the future. Yeah. He squeezed my fingers. Mom, thanks for selling the jewelry. I know it hurt. Oh, sweetheart, I said, thinking of the papers Pike was preparing, the evidence Owen had compiled, the ammunition I'd bought with that bracelet. You have no idea what that jewelry is about to buy. Thursday morning, I made my final purchase. The remaining pieces of my grandmother's set would stay in Hartley's safe. I'd need them for the performance. But I liquidated 2 bonds my husband had left me, adding another $15,000 to my war chest. With that money, I bought 3 more vendor debts, 2 equipment leases, and most satisfyingly, the past due rental agreement on Sabrina's Audi. Every purchase came with assignment documents, security interests, and the right to immediate possession upon default. By Thursday night, I controlled 60% of Vale Atelier's claimed assets and held secured claims totaling $97,000. The company's actual value, according to Owen's analysis, was negative $40,000. You own her, Owen said simply. She just doesn't know it yet. Not her, I corrected. Her lies. I own every lie she's told. And Sunday night, I'm going to sell them back to her. With interest. What's the interest rate on betrayal? I thought of Caleb's tired face, of 3 years of subtle humiliations, of my mother's jewelry being reduced to party funds. Everything, I said. The interest rate is everything she claimed to have. Friday arrived with a gift Sabrina called to confirm my attendance and special presentation at the gala. Eleanor, I'm so touched that you want to speak. This really means everything to me. Oh, Sabrina, I said, sorting through foreclosure documents. I promise you, Sunday night will be unforgettable. And you'll bring the rest of the jewelry for the display. Patricia said you wanted to present it formally. Every piece will be there. Perfect. Oh, and Eleanor, wear something appropriate. I've told everyone you're one of our major stakeholders. I smiled at the phone. Don't worry, I'll dress for the occasion. After all, it's not every day you get to show everyone exactly what kind of family we are. Saturday morning brought a flurry of activity. Sabrina was in full crisis mode, calling vendors, terrorizing her assistant, and most tellingly, desperately trying to move money between accounts. Owen had been monitoring the digital paper trail, and her panic was palpable. She's trying to float checks, he reported over the phone. Writing payments from the Vale Atelier account that won't clear until Monday, hoping Sunday's investments will cover them. How much is she short? For the gala alone, $30,000. The catering company is demanding certified funds by 5 p.m. today, or they walk. I made a decision. Call them. Offer to guarantee payment personally if they'll maintain service through Sunday night. You want to pay for her party? I want to ensure there's a party. The stage needs to be perfect for the performance. I spent the afternoon with Attorney Pike, reviewing every detail. He'd prepared 3 sets of documents, the notice of default, a cease and desist for fraudulent use of my reputation, and most importantly, a criminal complaint ready for immediate filing. The sheriff's office can have someone there within minutes, if needed, Pike assured me. Deputy Morrison will be off duty but nearby. He's agreed to be available. Not arrest, not yet. I want witnesses to understand what they're seeing first. That evening, Caleb called 3 times. I didn't answer. Sabrina had clearly sensed something was wrong, and she was using him as a scout. The 4th time, I picked up. Mum, where are you? Sabrina needs to go over tomorrow's schedule. I'll be there, darling. 7 sharp. She wants to rehearse your speech. No need. I know exactly what I'm going to say. There was a pause. Mum, are you okay? You sound different. I'm perfect. Caleb. For the first time in 3 years, I'm absolutely perfect. Sunday arrived grey and cold, fitting weather for a funeral. I spent the morning at church, praying not for forgiveness, but for strength. May Ellison sat beside me, knowing what was coming. You're sure about this? She whispered during the hymn. Would you let someone destroy your child? No, but Eleanor, this will be public. That's the point. At 4 p. I began preparing. The grey dress I chose was expensive but understated, the kind of outfit that whispered rather than shouted. I added pearl earrings, my own, not my grandmother's. Those jewels would make their entrance separately. Owen called at 5:30. She's at the venue, having a meltdown. The investors from Cleveland just confirmed attendance. She's promised them exclusive territory rights. The same rights she sold to Detroit, and Pittsburgh, and Columbus. She's quadruple selling the same expansion. Perfect. Make sure you have documentation of all 4 contracts. I arrived at Maple and Finch at 6:45. The parking lot was already filling with expensive cars. Through the ballroom windows, I could see Sabrina directing staff, her silver dress catching the light like armor. She'd chosen her battlefield. She didn't know I'd chosen my weapons. Tom Brennan from Brilliant Events was adjusting speakers near the stage. He caught my eye and nodded slightly. Every piece of equipment in the room belonged to me now, though the guests admiring the setup didn't know it. Eleanor, Patricia Westfield, rushed over. You're early. Sabrina will be thrilled. I wanted to review the setup. Where will the investors be seated? Front tables, naturally. The Cleveland group at table 1, Detroit at 2. All in one room. How efficient. I walked through the space, noting details. The projection screen where Sabrina would show her fraudulent portfolio. The podium where she'd make promises she couldn't keep. The side door where Deputy Morrison would enter if needed. At 7 sharp, guests began arriving in earnest. I recognized half of Cedar Ridge's social elite, the country club set who'd embraced Sabrina as one of their own. They air-kissed and admired each other's outfits, while waiters circulated with champagne I was secretly paying for. Sabrina appeared at my elbow, her smile sharp as winter ice. Eleanor, don't you look appropriate? As do you. Very shiny. Her smile flickered. Where's the jewelry? Safe. It'll make its appearance when the time is right. Well, don't wait too long. The investors are eager to see tangible family commitment. She swept away to greet the Cleveland group, and I watched her work. She was good. I'd give her that. Charming. Confident. Painting pictures of an empire that existed only in her imagination. The men in expensive suits nodded along, enchanted by her vision and probably her neckline. Caleb arrived at 7:20, looking miserable in his best suit. He found me by the bar. Mum, Sabrina's really stressed. Please don't do anything to upset her tonight. I promise everything I do tonight will be in the family's best interest. Good. Good. He grabbed a whiskey, his hand shaking slightly. She says after tonight, Everything changes. We'll be able to pay off the loans, move to a bigger house, maybe start a family. My heart cracked. Caleb, has she ever shown you the books, the real numbers? I told you, I don't understand business. You understand engineering, systems, logic. What happens when a structure is built on a flawed foundation? He frowned. It collapses. But, ladies and gentlemen, Sabrina's voice rang out from the stage. Please take your seats. We have an incredible evening planned. The crowd moved toward their tables. I noted Owen in the back, camera ready. Pike stood near the exit, briefcase in hand. Deputy Morrison, in civilian clothes, sat at the bar. All the pieces were in position. Sabrina took the microphone, radiant in her delusion. Welcome to the Aurora Gala, where the future of luxury event planning begins tonight. You're not just witnessing a presentation, you're participating in history. I found my seat at the family table, front and center. Caleb sat beside me, transfixed by his wife's performance. Around us, potential investors leaned forward, checkbooks ready. Before we begin our formal presentation, Sabrina continued, I want to acknowledge someone special. My mother-in-law, Eleanor Whitaker, has made an extraordinary sacrifice for Vale Atelier's success. She's liquidating precious family heirlooms to invest in our vision. Eleanor, would you say a few words? The spotlight found me. 200 faces turned my way. I stood, smoothing my dress, and walked to the stage. Sabrina handed me the microphone, her smile triumphant. I looked out at the audience, the innocent guests, the complicit investors, my broken son. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out a single folded document. Good evening, I began, my voice carrying clearly. Sabrina asked me to speak about sacrifice and family investment. I'm happy to oblige. Sabrina beamed beside me, not noticing Pike moving closer to the stage, not seeing Owen's camera focused on her face, not aware that her world was about to end. 3 weeks ago, I continued, my son and daughter-in-law asked me to sell my grandmother's jewelry to fund this event. Tonight, I'd like to show you exactly what that money purchased. I unfolded the paper, the UCC1 financing statement with its official stamp. It bought the truth. The ballroom fell silent. Sabrina's smile froze like ice cracking on a pond, beautiful and dangerous in the seconds before collapse. This, I held up the document, is a UCC1 financing statement. For those unfamiliar with secured transactions law, it means I hold a perfected security interest in all assets of Vale Atelier LLC. I paused, letting the weight settle. In simpler terms, I own every piece of equipment in this room. What are you talking about? Sabrina's laugh was pitched too high. That's ridiculous. This is my equipment, my company. Actually, it belongs to Brilliant Events Supply. Or it did, until they sold me the debt you've been dodging for 6 months. I pulled out the assignment papers. $43,000, now $47,000 with interest and fees, due immediately. The Cleveland investor, Marcus Rothwell, stood up. What's going on here? An excellent question, Mr. Rothwell. I turned to him. Tell me. Which exclusive territories did Mrs. Vale promise you, Cleveland and Columbus? Or was it Cleveland and Cincinnati? Both. All of Ohio, actually. Interesting. I gestured to table 2. Perhaps you should compare notes with the Detroit group. They bought exclusive rights to the entire Midwest. The murmuring started then, low and dangerous. Sabrina grabbed for the microphone, but I stepped back. While we're discussing territories, I continued, projecting clearly. Table 3 might want to know they've purchased the same Pennsylvania expansion rights that Table 4 bought last week. This is insane, Sabrina shrieked. She's lying. She's a bitter old woman who… Owen, I called out. Could you share the contracts, please? Owen moved through the crowd, handing out copies of Sabrina's conflicting agreements. The investors snatched them, comparing signatures, dates, identical promises for different regions. The murmur grew to a roar. But wait, I said, raising my voice. There's more. The room quieted again, the way people hush at accident scenes. This jewelry, Sabrina mentioned my grandmother's precious heirlooms. I reached into my purse again, pulling out the original jewelry box. It's right here. All of it. Sabrina's face went white. But you said… I sold the bracelet, just the bracelet. The money went to buying your debts and documenting your fraud. I opened the box, displaying the gleaming pieces. The rest stayed safe, waiting for tonight. You bitch, she hissed, forgetting the microphone was still on. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several society matrons stood to leave. Such language, I said mildly. But we're not done. Mr. Pike. Attorney Pike approached the stage carrying his briefcase. Mrs. Sabrina Vale, you're being served with a notice of default and demand for immediate payment of all outstanding debts to my client. Additionally, this cease and desist orders you to stop using Mrs. Whitaker's name and reputation in any business capacity. You can't do this. Sabrina turned to Caleb. Tell them you're my husband. Stop her. Caleb stood slowly, his face grey. Mum, what are you doing? Protecting you. I pulled out the final set of documents. These are the papers your wife had you sign. The personal guarantees, the fraudulent power of attorney she used to pledge your 401k, the lease in Columbus you know nothing about. I handed them to him, watching his eyes scan the pages, watching understanding dawn. You put my retirement as collateral. His voice was barely a whisper. Without telling me, baby, it's just paperwork, Sabrina said desperately. Creative financing, everyone does it. Page 4. I told him. The transfer of assets to Vale Holdings LLC. Your name appears on all the debts. None of the assets. The projection screen behind us suddenly lit up. Owen had connected his laptop. The security footage began playing Sabrina stealing equipment at 2:15 a.m., staging fake portfolio shoots, lying to investors on camera. Turn it off. Sabrina lunged for the laptop, but Deputy Morrison stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down. Who the hell are you? Deputy Morrison, Sheriff's Office. We've received multiple complaints of fraud tonight. I'll need you to remain available for questioning. The room erupted. Investors shouted accusations. Guests filmed with their phones. Patricia Westfield was on her radio, calling security. The carefully orchestrated gala became a crime scene. But I wasn't finished. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, reclaiming the microphone. If you've written checks tonight, I suggest you call your banks immediately. Stop payment. If you've signed contracts, Attorney Pike will be available to discuss your options. Marcus Rothwell pushed through the crowd, his face purple with rage. You knew she was running a scam and you let us… I discovered it 12 days ago, I said calmly. Every agency that needed to know has been informed. You're sophisticated investors. I assumed you'd done due diligence. This is entrapment, Sabrina screamed. You set me up. No, dear. You set yourself up. I just documented it. I turned to Tom Brennan, who'd been waiting by the soundboard. Mr. Brennan, as the secured creditor for this equipment, I'm exercising my right to immediate possession. Please begin removing everything. The lights flickered as his team began disconnecting cables. The music cut out. In the growing darkness, lit only by emergency exits and phone screens, Sabrina's silver dress looked like tarnished metal. Caleb. She grabbed my son's arm. Don't let her do this. We're married. You have to protect me. He pulled free, stepping backward. You stole my retirement. You forged my signature. You... His voice broke. You made me betray my mother. She betrayed us. She was supposed to sell everything. The jewelry was supposed to save us. No, I said quietly. But the acoustics carried my voice. The jewelry was supposed to fund your lies. Instead, I used its value to buy something priceless, the truth about who you really are. The main lights went out completely as the last cable was pulled. In the darkness, I heard Sabrina sob real tears this time, not the practiced ones from that dinner 3 weeks ago, when the emergency lights kicked in fully, casting everything in harsh white glare. She looked smaller somehow. The silver dress was just polyester. The makeup had run. The mask had finally cracked completely. Mrs. Vale, Deputy Morrison said formally. You'll need to come with me. Several investors have filed complaints. Wait, I said. Everyone turned to me. I walked to Sabrina, standing close enough to smell her ruined perfume. The jewelry you wanted so badly. My grandmother wore it through the Depression. She knew what real hardship looked like. She would have hated what you represent: false wealth, borrowed importance, stolen dreams. I clasped the jade necklace around my own neck, feeling its cool weight against my skin. But she would have loved this moment, watching a parasite get pulled off her great-grandson before it could drain him completely. Sabrina's face contorted. She raised her hand to slap me, but Morrison caught her wrist. That's assault, ma'am. Now you're under arrest. As he led her out, she turned back one last time. Caleb, please. My son stood beside me, shoulders straight for the first time in years. My name is Whitaker, he said. I don't know you. The ballroom emptied quickly after that. Investors fled to contact lawyers. Guests scattered to spread gossip. Within an hour, only the cleanup crew remained, loading my equipment into trucks. The aftermath was swift and brutal. While Deputy Morrison escorted Sabrina to his patrol car, Caleb and I stood in the wreckage of the ballroom, overturned chairs, abandoned champagne glasses, and scattered investment portfolios littered the floor like evidence of a battlefield. Mom, Caleb said, his voice hollow. The house. The cars. Everything's in both our names. Not everything. I pulled out Owen's final folder. Page by page. Son. Let's see what's really yours and what's hers. We sat at one of the remaining tables while Owen walked us through 3 years of financial manipulation. The Riverton Heights house, purchased with Caleb's credit, but deeded 60% to Vale Holdings LLC. The Audi leased under a company that didn't exist. The joint accounts systematically drained through business transfers. This checking account, Owen pointed out, shows 47 transfers to Vale Holdings over 6 months, always $9,999, just under the reporting threshold. Structuring, Attorney Pike added, joining us. That's a federal crime on its own. Caleb's hands shook as he turned pages. How did I not see this? Because you loved her, I said simply. And she counted on that. Pike's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then handed it to me. The sheriff. They need you at the station. Sheriff Coleman's voice was grave. Mrs. Whitaker, your daughter-in-law is making accusations. Says you entrapped her, that this was premeditated destruction of her business. I need to take your statement. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I stood, gathering the jewelry box. Caleb grabbed my arm. Mum, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The things I said, the way I let her treat you. Later, I said gently. Right now, we need to protect what's left. At the sheriff's station, Sabrina sat in an interview room, her silver dress replaced with county jail grey. Through the window, I watched her gesture wildly, mascara streaking her cheeks as she spun tales of persecution. She's claiming you orchestrated this to steal her business, Coleman told me. Says the jewelry was promised as investment capital and you reneged to destroy her. I laid out my documentation chronologically. Every receipt, every email, every piece of evidence Owen had gathered. Coleman, who'd known me since Caleb was in elementary school, whistled low. This is extensive, professional, even 20 years in accounts receivable teaches you to document everything. She also claims your son was fully aware of all business dealings. I played the recording from my phone, Caleb, admitting he signed without reading, that Sabrina handled everything. That's illegally recorded. Sabrina shrieked from the next room. Ohio is a one-party consent state, Pike said calmly. Mrs. Whitaker was within her rights. The federal agents arrived at 11:45 p.m. Badges gleaming under fluorescent lights. Wire fraud across state lines had triggered their involvement. They took custody of several boxes of evidence, particularly interested in the investor contracts from different states. Mrs. Vale, the lead agent said, entering Sabrina's room. You're now facing federal charges. Her lawyer, a nervous young man she'd somehow summoned, tried to intervene. My client was conducting legitimate business, with forged signatures. I asked, loud enough to carry, with pledged assets she didn't own, with the same territories sold 4 times. The lawyer reviewed the documents Pike provided. His face went pale. I need to speak with my client privately. Outside the station, Caleb waited by my car, cell phone pressed to his ear. I've called 6 attorneys, he said. 3 say the marriage is voidable due to fraud. The house, we might lose it. My retirement is gone unless we can prove she acted without authority. We can prove it, Owen said, appearing from the shadows. He'd been busy. I've found 12 more instances of forgery. Also, Vale Holdings, LLC. It was formed before you were married. Premeditation. That's good for annulment grounds, Pike noted. We stood in the cold parking lot, breath visible in the November air. The weight of the evening settled like snow. The equipment, I said suddenly. Tom Brennan's crew. They need somewhere to store it. Already handled, Owen replied. Tom's warehouse. You now own approximately $200,000 in professional event equipment, free and clear. Sell it. Use the proceeds to pay Caleb's creditors. Mom. No. It's not charity. It's restitution. I faced my son. She stole from you using my name, my reputation. This makes it right. Back at my house at 1:30 a.m. We sat around my kitchen table. Caleb, Owen, Pike, and me. The jewelry box sat open between us, my grandmother's pieces catching the overhead light. She wanted these so badly, Caleb said, touching the jade bracelet I hadn't sold. Why? Because they represented something she never had. I said, history, legacy, family that endures. She thought she could buy that or steal it. Pike's phone rang. He listened, then smiled grimly. The federal prosecutor. They're adding money laundering charges. The pattern of transfers to Vale Holdings triggered banking alerts they'd been investigating. How long will she get? Caleb asked. If convicted on all charges, 5 to 7 years minimum. The room fell silent. Caleb stood, walked to the window, stared into the darkness. 3 years, he said finally. 3 years of my life. Not wasted, I said. Educated. You'll never be fooled again. He turned back, and for the first time in years, I saw my real son. Not the puppet Sabrina had created, but the man his father would have recognized. The investors, he said. Some of them are innocent, just people hoping to make good returns. Pike will help them recover what they can, I assured him. The guilty ones, the ones who knew something was off but ignored it for promised profits, they'll learn an expensive lesson. And Vale Atelier will be liquidated through bankruptcy, Pike said. Your mother's secured claims take priority. She'll recover most of her investment. Which goes to paying your debts, I added. Clean slate. Owen pulled out his laptop, showing bankruptcy filing templates. We can file Monday morning. Emergency motion to freeze all remaining assets. Do it, Caleb said. Then, quieter. Mum, can I stay here tonight? The house? I can't go back there. Your room's always ready. As the others left, I walked them out. Pike paused at the door. Eleanor, what you did tonight, most people couldn't have pulled it off. Most people haven't spent decades tracking other people's money. I just applied professional skills to a personal problem. Owen laughed. You weaponized accounts receivable. I weaponized truth, I corrected. The accounts were just ammunition. After they left, I found Caleb in his old room, staring at his high school trophies. Dad would be ashamed of me, he said. Your father would be proud you survived, I said, sitting beside him. And proud you stood up when it counted. I didn't stand up. You did. Standing up isn't always about being first. Sometimes it's about recognizing when someone's fighting for you and choosing the right side. He leaned against my shoulder, this grown man who'd once been my little boy. The jewelry, he said. You could have sold it all. Walked away. Let me learn the hard way. I picked up the jade necklace, running my fingers over stones that had touched 4 generations of skin. Some things are worth more than their price, I said. And some prices are worth paying to protect what matters. What matters? You, I said simply. You always mattered more than jewelry, more than money, more than keeping peace. It just took Sabrina's greed to remind me that sometimes love means war. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. I sat in Attorney Pike's office at 9 sharp, signing papers that would formally begin Vale Atelier's bankruptcy proceedings. Caleb sat beside me, adding his signature where required, each stroke of the pen severing another tie to Sabrina's web. The federal prosecutor called. Pike informed us. Sabrina's bail has been denied. Flight risk, given the hidden accounts they've discovered. Hidden accounts. Caleb looked up sharply. 3 of them, in the Cayman Islands, opened 6 months ago. Pike slid a document across the desk. She'd been planning her exit long before the gala. I felt no satisfaction, only a cold finality. How much? 80,000, siphoned from Vale Atelier over the past year. Caleb laughed bitterly. She was stealing from her own company while putting me in debt to fund it. By noon, the liquidation was in motion. Tom Brennan arrived at my house with a check for the equipment, enough to cover most of Caleb's forced debts. The rest would come from the bankruptcy estate, Pike assured us. Mrs. Whitaker, Tom said, shaking my hand. The business community owes you. Sabrina had 3 more vendors on the hook for expansion franchises. Just cleaning house, I replied. That afternoon, Owen presented his final report. 38 pages of meticulous documentation. Every lie catalogued. Every fraud exposed. This could help the other victims recover damages, he said. Mind if I share it with the prosecutor? Share it with anyone who needs it. Tuesday brought unexpected visitors. Marcus Rothwell and 2 other investors stood at my door, looking smaller without their country club swagger. Mrs. Whitaker, Rothwell began, we owe you an apology, and probably our thanks. You owe me nothing. We were going to wire another 100,000 each, another investor admitted. Your interventions saved us from catastrophic losses. You saved yourselves by listening to evidence, I corrected. Though next time, perhaps do due diligence before writing checks. They left humbled, and I felt a small spark of hope that Cedar Ridge's investment community might have learned something. Wednesday, the divorce papers were filed. Pike had found a specialist in fraudulent marriage annulment, given the evidence of premeditation. Caleb would likely be free within 60 days. The house, he asked, sold to cover debts, but your credit can be rehabilitated, your reputation restored. That evening, we sat in my living room, sorting through the debris of his life. Bank statements, forged contracts, the detritus of deception. Mum, Caleb said suddenly, the jewelry. You should sell it. Really sell it. Take a vacation. Buy something nice for yourself. I lifted the jade necklace from its box, holding it to the light. Your great-grandmother wore this to my parents' wedding. Your grandmother wore it to mine. I wore it to yours, though that turned out differently than expected. Exactly why you should. I'll wear it to your next wedding. I interrupted. When you find someone who values you for more than your credit score and earning potential. After this, I'm never getting married again. Never is a long time, and these stones have seen longer. Thursday afternoon, Sabrina's parents arrived from Kansas. They sat in my kitchen. These normal people who'd somehow produced a monster. Tears streaming down her mother's face. We don't understand, her mother whispered. We raised her right. Church every Sunday. College education. Good values. Sometimes people choose to become who they are, I said gently. It's not always the parents' fault. Can you forgive her? Her father asked. For Caleb's sake. Forgiveness isn't mine to give. That's Caleb's choice. But I can tell you this, she's facing consequences now. Real ones. Maybe that's what she always needed. They left with shoulders bent, aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I felt sorry for them. They'd lost a daughter to greed, just as surely as I'd almost lost a son. Friday morning, final accounting. Pike presented the numbers after liquidation, debt payment, and legal fees. Caleb would emerge with damaged credit, but no remaining obligations. The investors who'd signed contracts would receive partial refunds from the seized Cayman accounts. Vale Atelier would cease to exist by month's end. And Sabrina? Trial date set for March. The federal prosecutor says with the evidence you've provided, conviction is all but certain. I signed the last papers, formally releasing my claims once all debts were satisfied. The jewelry, my grandmother's legacy, remained intact, waiting in its box for whatever came next. Saturday, 1 week after the gala. Cedar Ridge Chronicle ran the story on the front page, local business fraud exposed at Country Club Gala. They called me for comment. I declined. The evidence spoke louder than any words I could offer. Caleb moved back to his childhood room temporarily, planning his next steps carefully this time. His company had been supportive, understanding he was a victim. His reputation, while bruised, would heal. Sunday evening, we stood in my backyard, burning the Vale Atelier promotional materials in my fire pit. Each glossy lie turned to ash and floated away on the November wind. "Mum," Caleb said, watching the flames. "That night at dinner, when Sabrina insulted you, demanded the jewelry, why didn't you just tell us both to go to hell? Because anger would have made me the villain. You'd have defended her, chosen her side. I needed you to see the truth for yourself. So you let me think you were weak. Sometimes strength looks like surrender until the moment it strikes." He fed another portfolio to the flames photos of parties that never happened, promises that were never real. "Dad would have been proud of you," he said finally. "He would have been proud of us both. You for surviving, me for ensuring you did." The last document burned away. We stood in the gathering darkness, the jewelry box between us on the patio table. I opened it one final time, the pieces gleaming in the firelight. 3 weeks ago, they demanded I sell the past to fund a lie, I said. Instead, I used one small piece to purchase the truth, and the rest stays in the family, where it belongs, where it's always belonged. Caleb picked up the jade bracelet, the one piece I'd sold and bought back from Tom after the liquidation. This one made the whole thing possible. "Your great-grandmother always said that bracelet was lucky. Turns out she was right." We walked back inside, leaving the ashes to cool in the Ohio night. The jewelry box returned to my closet shelf, waiting for the next chapter, a real wedding perhaps, or a grandchild's graduation, some future moment worth marking with beauty that had survived betrayal. 3 months later, the headline read, "Sabrina Vale sentenced to 6 years federal prison." Caleb and I didn't attend the sentencing. We were at Hartley's fine jewelry, having the pieces cleaned and restrung, preparing them for whatever genuine celebrations might lie ahead. "Mrs. Whitaker," Mr. Hartley said, examining the restored set. "These pieces have quite a story now." "All heirlooms do," I replied. "That's what makes them precious. Not their market value, but their survival." That night, I wore the complete set to dinner with Caleb at a simple Italian restaurant, not the country club. Just a family place where the lasagna was homemade and nobody cared about image. To the future. Caleb toasted with his water glass. "And to the past that protected it," I replied, touching the jade at my throat. The stones were cool against my skin, carrying the warmth of all the women who'd worn them before me. They'd survived wars, depression, recession, and now deception. They would survive whatever came next. In the end, Sabrina had been right about one thing: The jewelry was an investment, just not the kind she'd imagined. It had bought something no money could purchase the moment when my son looked at me with clear eyes and said, "Thank you for saving my life." That was worth more than all the jade in the world. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share your location in the comments so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about Eleanor's journey. What would you have done in her situation?